Hi everyone, this is Brian Hayes and welcome to episode 22 of the Music Mind podcast. Today my special guest is Jamie Rigg, an amazing musical director, piano player, composer, an all-round veteran of the Australian music and entertainment industry. Jamie has worked at the highest level on all of the Australian major television networks, toured internationally, and performed with everyone who's anyone. Please enjoy my conversation with Jamie Rigg.
Well, the shark, babe, has such teeth, dear, and it shows them pearly white, just a jackknife is old. Like Heath did, and he keeps it out of sight. When that shark bites with its teeth, scarlet billows start to spread. Fancy gloves old has McHeath, babe. So there's never a trace of red. On the sidewalk, Sunday morning, lie his body just oozing life. And someone sneaking round the corner, that someone be Mac the knife. It's a tugboat about to down by the river, don't you know, where a cement bag truth little down. That cemented dust is there for the kilos, dear. 5 will get you 10. Back is back in town. Didn't you hear about Louis Miller? He disappeared, dear, after drawing out all his hard-earned cash. And now Mac, he spends like a sailor. Could it be that our boy's done something rash? By Jenny Diver, silky talking, I miss London costume, do-do-da, hey, that line for us on the right dear. Woo. Now that she's looking to get you, hoping to be that Louis, you're listening. Mackie's back in town, he's back in town. Good old Mackie, Mackie's back in Mike Walsh town.
Well, hi, Jamie, and welcome to the Music Mind podcast. It's fantastic to have you as my special guest today for episode 22 in the series.
Absolute pleasure to have a chat with you, mate. You're doing some great stuff with lots of people in the industry, so great to be a part of that.
Thank you. Now, our audience have just seen and heard a fantastic clip of the late, great Ricky May out front of a big band. You're playing the piano live on TV. I believe it's on the Mike Walsh show. What's your memory of that particular recording?
Well, that particular one, it's interesting because my career with Ricky and timeline went back many years prior to that, of course. I had been with him since 1970. So that particular show we did in 1987, I reckon by then I'd played Mac the Knife hundreds of times and never got sick of it because it's a swinging arrangement, and boy, no one swung better than Ricky.
Yes.
And he was just such a gem, you know. My memories of that particular night was more about the show. The show was a really interesting one to do because Mike Walsh had moved across from Channel 9 to do this series on the ABC. And I had a reasonable amount of experience in television by then, and we were able to pull in some pretty good name people, some musical people to do that one solid music spot in each episode of the show. Great band. The personnel of that band, it was the
Well,
A-team, you know.
well, it certainly sounded like the A-team. Who
Yeah.
were some of the players in
Well,
that group?
well, my great friend Doug Gallagher on the drums,
Yeah.
beyond a legend in the Australian scene. He had been on TV doing Mike Walsh and Ray Martin shows for many years, but also great session player.
Oh,
Does and I'm in fact still working with him now. Somewhat 37 years later, we are doing a show together at the moment.
oh,
So
brilliant.
I
Yeah.
never get tired of playing with Doug. He's been so much a part of my musical life, and
Yes.
he's there. Now let me think. Phil Scorgie was the bass player.
I thought it was Phil. Yes.
Great Kiwi bass player who was, so big. And still great musician. A lot of these guys are obviously still with us and around and doing great stuff. Tom Ferris is the guitar player.
Yes.
The horn section, John Hoffman, who you probably
Yeah,
know,
I
very
know, John. Yes.
trumpet player,
Yes.
killer lead trumpet player.
Yes.
Paul Thorne was the other trumpet player, I think, and Paul's
Yes.
still doing stuff with us. Who was on? James Greening was on trombone
Okay.
in that band.
Yeah.
Trevor Griffin, one of the sax players.
Yeah. Yes.
Maybe
Just,
Graham Jesse, I think.
yeah.
Swinging band, great
Swinging band.
arrangement.
And
Yeah.
what I love about it is, and you obviously, I don't think you had music, as you said, you'd played Mac the Knife 10,000 times, but it was
Yeah.
just obvious you were just sitting a great acoustic piano sound.
Yeah.
Were you the actual MD for that show at that time?
I was. So I was MD. So that had come, I had been, look, my television sort of experience came on the back of working with Ricky.
Yes.
I met him in 1970 and we just clicked. I was 18 years old. So you can do the maths. At 18 years old, I left school and, my brother and I joined a band in Sydney called Heart and Soul, which was a bit of a pop rock band.
Yes.
And we travelled to the Gold Coast.
Yes.
And I was working in a nightclub in Cavill Avenue called Bicky's nightclub.
Right.
And Ricky came to town and he came into the club that night and got up to have a jam. Someone said, "Get up, Ricky," and I was playing. There's a photo that you may have seen I've sent to you on my 18th birthday.
We'll put that up while you're talking. We'll put that up.
With Ricky and I in Bicky's nightclub.
Yep.
So anyway, Ricky gets up to play and I'm playing. We were playing pop songs of the time, 70 songs, a lot of good songs around.
Yeah.
And he said, in his typical fashion, turned around to me and saw this little young kid sitting there and he says, "Give me an E flat." And I play him an E flat chord. And he started singing Mountain Greenery, the classic old standard, "In a Mountain Green." And I followed him.
Yeah.
I'd never played it, but I knew it because my dad was a great jazz piano player,
Wow.
a part-timer.
Yeah.
But I grew up standing at the end, from when I was 2, 3, 4 years old, at the end of the piano when the family was having sing-alongs, and Dad was playing all these standards.
And what was your dad's name?
Dad's name was Len Rigg. He's actually had a nickname of Cappy, so Cappy Rigg. He played round doing, part-time. He was actually an architect, but did weekend gigs playing weddings
But no doubt a good player, I would suspect.
In that real old style London stride sort of feel.
Yes.
A song we're going to talk about later on.
Yeah.
Is right out of his book. Winifred Atwell was another one that he probably modeled.
I remember
himself
her.
on.
I remember my mum had her. She loved those records. And I put a photo up. You sent me a photo of your dad and a little band, an alto sax player and a bass player. So we'll throw that up while we're talking.
Yeah. Because that was I didn't realise it at the time, but the invaluable ear training that I had as a young kid, just hearing all this music in the house, and I'm still a great exponent and believe that most kids should be subjected to music from a very young age because it does stick, So, the Beatles came along later when I was 12, 13 years old.
Yes.
Loved them, immersed myself in everything Beatles, most fabulous music I had ever heard. And
after that little winging it with Ricky for that very first time at that club, How did obviously you became friends pretty quickly by the
Yeah,
sound of it.
really
How did it
quickly.
grow from there?
Well, at the end of that song, we played Mountain Greenery, and I knew I could follow him. I knew the changes. Never played it, but I thought, oh, that goes there, goes to the,
Yeah.
and I played through the changes with him. And he sort of sang, and he turned around to me at the end of the song and said, "How do you know that? You're not entitled to know that song. How do you know
That's
that?" And I said, "I don't know. I just remember it from somewhere." And then we did On the Sunny Side of the Street. That was the
oh,
other song we did. We did
beautiful.
those two songs. So
Yeah.
that was the end of it. Ricky said, "Well done, kid." Got off stage. As it turns out, he was on the Gold Coast to take up a contract at the Surfers Paradise Beer Garden for
Right.
12 months.
Yes.
This was the week before he was due to start. And in typical Ricky fashion, I mean this in the most loving way, he
Yes.
was a very disorganized man.
Yeah.
He, he things were always pretty loose. And
Yeah.
anyway, it turns out he had been given the contract to start in the beer garden the following Monday, and he had a makeshift band. He had, he brought a drummer and a bass player up from Sydney,
Yeah.
um, and a sax player, and he didn't have a keyboard player as yet.
Mm.
And so after that night at Bicky's, the next morning, I get a knock at my little flat and got in Service Paradise. I open the door, and he's standing there. I said, "Ricky," he said,
Yeah.
"well done last night. It's great." He said,
Yeah.
"What are you doing at the moment?" I said, "Oh, I'm just playing scratch this and a few clubs here and,
Mm. Mm.
picking up whatever I can as an 18-year-old keyboard player." He said,
Yeah.
"Do you want to start with me in the beer garden on Monday?
Wow.
Free let's
Yeah.
see how it goes. Do you want?" And the beer garden gig was two shifts a day, 12:30 till 3 and
Yes.
7:30 till 10, 6 days a week.
Yeah.
That like, so much work and stuff.
And the funny thing, Jamie, is I have a vague memory. My parents would often take my brother and me as little kids to the Gold Coast, and we'd have a holiday in the caravan parks.
Yeah.
I have a vague memory of seeing Ricky May in
Yeah.
Surfers Paradise, and therefore you,
You,
no
good
doubt,
on you.
playing. It's in there. I saw Ricky on TV like everyone did every
Yeah,
second
yeah,
night of the week,
yeah.
but somewhere in my mind, I believe I saw you and Ricky having a go at Surfers
Well,
Paradise.
that's a great connection some
Oh,
53 years later.
that's right.
And look, we had one rehearsal. This is typical Ricky style again. He had so much natural talent and music in him.
Yes, yeah,
We called one rehearsal on the Saturday morning, um, and we played through a few songs. A few of them I remember that were Louis Prima songs like Shuffle Feel things. I'd never played that before.
mm.
And I sort of got the gist of how to play a shuffle. Dung da dung da dung da dung
Pretty
da.
quickly.
Like
That's
pretty
right.
good there quickly. And I was,
Yeah,
and on that
yeah.
we learned about three or four songs. And I said, "We've got to do 2.5 hours. It's like three or four
Oh,
sets." He said, "Don't worry." And we started on the Monday, and the band was called Ricky May and the Chaos.
the
And
chaos.
and
Yeah,
it and boy was it ever, because that's what he would do. I mean, his
yeah,
style, Ricky's style was just whatever. He could ad lib for hours on stage. He just
yeah,
up
yeah,
there, and like that's I think why he and I clicked, because he would just call him, "Give me a C, give me an F chord," and he'd
yeah,
start singing a song, and
yeah.
we're all just chasing him, and I just really learned to be able to follow him,
Oh,
and that held me in good stead with him. That's why I spent 18 years playing with him. That we worked all over the world with bands that,
yeah.
we'd have a rehearsal and it would all fall apart in the first half of the first song, but
That's
he
right.
and I would plow on,
Yeah.
and make something of it, you
As
know.
a team, you'd
And,
get it through. You'd get through.
and he
Yeah,
knew that I'd always be there,
yeah.
and I'd follow him, and I just had this instinct to just hear where he was going. After a while, it became second nature. I just knew what he was going to do.
So the age difference, were you about 10 years younger than Ricky?
Yeah,
What,
so
roughly?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's 9 years. He was born in 43. I'm in
Okay.
52.
Yeah. Yeah.
He seems so much older than me, so much older.
Yeah.
He was a father figure. My dad passed away. My jazz playing father passed away when I was 13. So
Okay.
I
Yeah.
lost that fatherly connection.
Yes.
But then Ricky I met when I was 18. He sort of became a second father figure, but not the world's greatest role model, as it
No,
turned
he
out.
always looked to me like a guy who was here for a good time, not so
And
much a
boy,
long
and
time, you know.
boy, did he
Yeah.
have a good time. You know,
Yes.
the
Yes.
sad thing about that Mac the Knife was one of the last TV things I did with him because he passed away the
Yeah.
following year.
Mm.
I did do another TV thing the year after the Don Lane show. That was
Yes.
in 1988. And
Yes.
during that, while I was doing that series at Channel 10, he passed away in
Yes.
May of that year.
Yes. Natural rhythm. I even loved in that Mac the Knife. Now I read he was a drummer initially. Was he?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he played great drums. He not technically not great, but one of those guys that could
The rhythm.
splash and crash and just create a great feel, you know.
Well, you could
Because
sense that with his finger snaps at the start of Mac the
yeah,
Knife. You know,
oh
the
yeah,
syncopation. He was just
oh man,
playing with the fingers. You
he
know. Yeah.
the musicality in every part of his DNA was just amazing, you know. And he could match it in any sort of genre. We used to do all sorts of crazy things in the beer garden. He'd do Running Bear, the old
Yeah.
crazy
Yeah.
song, and
Yeah.
but then he could get up and sing with the Daley Wilson Big Band and rip that.
Absolutely.
He worked
Yeah.
he sang with the Buddy Rich Big Band when they toured here in the 80s as well, you
Wow.
know. So like he was well credentialed.
Well, what
Um,
I'd like to do now is, and I guess as a bit of evidence of that, there's a great clip of Ricky playing with some of the Sydney's top jazz musicians of the day. You're on piano, and I recognise Keith Sterling, the late Keith
yeah,
Sterling, on trumpet. In typical Ricky fashion, he, or used it as a group, did a beautiful jazz version of Surrey with a Fringe on Top.
yeah,
Now, for those music lovers who might remember that from Oklahoma, the 1943 musical,
yeah,
your
yeah.
version with Ricky is very different from that original musical.
Yeah.
It,
That's what he used to. He never really wanted just to go out and copy something, you know. He always wanted to put his own sort of stamp on things that he did like that. That particular clip came from it was 83, I think, or 84. We did the Sydney International Music Festival, it was called. It didn't last for very long, but it was certainly that year. I think we might have done one or two after that. There might have been. And it was at the old Regent Hotel in George Street. And Dave Brubeck was actually the headliner of that
oh,
of that uh,
wow. Yeah.
Sydney International Music
Yeah.
Festival, and we
Yeah.
got to meet Brubeck and stuff and have a
Yeah.
chat. And he did acknowledge Ricky, but that arrangement. So Ricky would take a song like that. He thought, "Oh, sorry, with the fringe on top."
Yeah.
You get up, cheeks and ducks and
That's
you
right. Yeah.
sorry.
That's
But
right.
Ricky,
Yeah.
he liked that syncopation. Bop, 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 bop,
Yeah.
ba,
Yeah.
da,
Yeah.
bop, da, bop, ba,
Oh,
da. But like
yeah.
he was able to rhythmically just make that so much more interesting. So he and I nutted out the format of it,
Yes.
and a great arranger at the time, I'm pretty sure I'm right here, called George Brodbeck, who's a
Oh,
trombone player,
yeah. I've heard of
a great
George. Yeah.
George,
Yeah.
and was a great arranger on the midday show at the
Yes.
time. He did a
Yeah.
lot of work for that.
Yeah.
Just a great arranger. He actually he arranged that or scored it out for the guys. And look at that band! Wow, Willie Quire on the drum, David Glide, who was the soprano sax player.
Yes.
He was the saxophone player in Sounds Incorporated, who
Right.
were the English band who supported the Beatles here on their
Wow.
1963 tour. So
Yeah.
that's
There's a
pretty
lot of,
amazing. And he stayed on and came. I think he went back, but he came back
yeah.
and lived in Australia. Gliding, and a great player. Dieter Voigt on upright bass. He passed away in the last few years.
Yes.
A mighty band. Steve Murphy on guitar, I think. But what a joy that one was, and what a great. That was actually from someone made a film of that whole music festival.
Let's have a look at that now. Well, just a
Yeah,
little bit of it. It's
should.
a
It's a
wonderful clip,
great clip and great
and
song.
it's how I remember Ricky May too.
Yeah,
This
great.
type of singing.
Music goes round and round. Hey, chicks and ducks and geese better scurry when they take you out in the Surrey with a fringe on the top. Watch that geese and see how flutters when they get them high stepping strutters, boy. It's the fringe on the top. windows are yellow, the upholstery's brown, the dashboard's genuine leather, with eyes so fat fingers who can cool right down. In case, you bet, in case there's a change in weather, two right side lights winking and blinking. Maybe there's a dream I'm thinking if I cannot stop. Shiny little Surrey, shiny little Surrey, with a fringe on the top. Surrey, in a hurry, just a little Surrey, it's in a hurry.
Okay, Jamie, what an amazing band. What a wonderful clip and what a great memory for you. We get to see your hands on the piano there playing some intricate
Yeah.
piano playing.
Yeah.
Just to round out, I suppose, your time with Ricky May, which was an enormous time. I read somewhere recently a guy called Bill Miller. I'd never heard of Bill Miller, but he was Frank Sinatra's MD apparently for
But
44 years. Playing piano with,
yeah,
and
yeah.
the wonderful story they said about Bill is back in the real early days with Sinatra. If someone sent Sinatra a song, it wasn't on cassette or tape. They'd actually send sheet music, and Bill's
Yeah.
job was to sit there with Sinatra and
Yeah.
play. Hey, someone sent this song, and Frank
Yeah.
would say, "What's it sound like?" Bill would sit there and play the song, and Frank
Yeah.
would either say, "Oh, I like that," or "No, toss that one."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I suppose one question I'd just like to tease out of you. We all know a piano player's job. They play the piano. What makes a musical director? What's the add-on responsibilities for an MD?
Yeah. Well, look, of course, you've got to, you just, with just Ricky and I, a lot of times going in and working with a scratch band from somewhere, good players, but you walk in and a lot of the time you'd have a talk through, you'd hand out the charts. Ricky's charts, I wish I had one to show you now. They had so much pencil and scribble all over them,
Yeah.
of guys that said, "Oh no, that he didn't do that section, so we'll scratch that out." But he
Yeah.
actually just decided on the day not to do that section, but it should be back in, and no, they were a mess. So it
Yeah.
was about telling the guys, "Look, these are the charts, but don't take them literally."
Mm.
Read them, but things could change and follow me. And I'll be cueing you. I'll be telling you. Sometimes Ricky would cut the band in the middle of a song
Oh.
and decide he wanted to do something else. And then, I'd have to say to the band, "You've got to be prepared. This
Yeah.
is not just a straight up reading gig and,
No.
playing. Anything
Mm.
can happen here."
Yeah.
And so a lot of my time, I was the communicator of Ricky's sort of way that he worked on stage. And we'd done so many shows together. We worked overseas together with lots of different bands. And we were just second nature together. So my job really was to, you know, say to the guys and give them confidence that it's all right. If you make a mistake, it's all right too. It's
Yeah.
sort of the way we roll.
Oh, what a nice way to
And
live. Yeah.
yeah, and it
Yeah.
was, the Jeff Harvey part of the story. So
Yes.
we started doing lots of TV. And we were going in, and I would go in as his MD, and there'd be the studio band there. We did lots of midday shows, which was that great show
Mm.
on 5 days a week, first of all with Mike Walsh and then later with Ray Martin.
Yes.
Jeff was always the MD. Jeff MD at Channel 9 for 40 years or something, from
Yes.
when TV pretty well started. And Jeff was just wonderful to me. He was such a mentor. Uh, he supported me. He helped me so much. He let me lead his band. He'd make jokes about it.
Wow.
And he
Okay.
would
Yeah.
he would say to me,
Yeah.
"Jamie, look around here. One
Yeah.
day this will all be yours." He would say. And of course, the band on the midday show were the heavyweight
Oh,
A
yeah.
team of Sydney. I mean, those
Great.
guys
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
like, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I gained their respect, and it was great. And what Jeff started to do was give me some work arranging, writing for the band.
Ah.
So,
Okay.
you want
Yeah.
to do a couple of charts for me? And I was, I'd done some stuff
Yeah.
for Ricky in charting. He said,
Yeah.
and the way I worked on the midday show was really high pressure because,
Mm.
they had guest artists on every day of the week,
Yeah.
live.
Mm.
And Jeff would ring you up on a Tuesday and say, I'm sending you a cassette in a courier.
Yeah.
I need a 12-piece arrangement done for tomorrow, right?
Oh,
Tomorrow's show. Someone's dropped out. What? So the cassette would arrive, and he would have. I'd sit there for 6 hours handwriting a score. Of course, we're
yeah.
talking the 80s here.
Yeah. Yeah. Handwriting. Yeah. Yeah.
Handwriting,
Yeah.
rubbing. You get your pencil in, you
Yeah.
try to work out the harmony, and once you'd finished the score, you'd have to put it in a taxi to the copyist at about 11 o'clock at night.
Uh,
He'd sit up all night copying. And I would go into the studio at 9 o'clock the next morning when rehearsals start. Shows live at midday.
yes.
Go in at 12 at 9 o'clock. There's the taxi arrives with the charts all copied. Jeff then would give them to me and say, "Go on, hand your arrangements out. Go on, give them to the guys."
So they know
And
who's responsible.
I'm terrified. I'm shaking. And then he said, "Well, God, you want to count them in? You're going to count them in?" And like I'm looking at
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
all
The
these
top
guys, Keith
players.
Sterling,
Yeah. Oh,
Rob
yeah.
Wilson,
Yeah.
Herbie Cannon,
Yeah.
all these guys.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
like, I'm trembling and I'm counting it in. And the
Yeah.
first, then you hear your song, your
You hear
chart
your
being played,
arrangement. Yeah.
and you're just hoping that it's not all an absolute disaster. In the early days, I was a bit unsure about the range of instruments where I
Mm,
was.
mm.
And those guys were so great. They said, "Oh, you've written a bit high for the flugelhorn."
Yeah.
They'd tell me in a really genuinely
Good.
supportive way. And so, I rolled on. From that, I gained a lot of confidence working in television.
Mate, there's a lovely little clip here. It's the shout chorus. You're playing the piano, Ricky singing, and in true Ricky style, he decides to come over, so the camera has to follow.
Yep.
And Jeff, you and Ricky sing
Yeah.
the final bars of the shout chorus. Do you remember this?
It's a classic moment of TV. I sure do, because that was so much his way. I mean, television directors was fraught for them because they just never knew what he was going to do.
Yeah.
He'd start off and they'd say, the floor manager would say, "Okay, Ricky, you start here."
Yeah.
And then in the second verse, you walk over to there.
Well, that's not going to happen.
Forget all that.
No.
Ricky just walks over into the audience, over to the bandstand,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
cameramen are scrambling, running around the chair. But everyone loved, all the TV people, all the crews, they loved Ricky,
Let's have a look at this. This is a beautiful moment.
Yeah, okay.
Man, that cat is high. Let's go. Pretty, pretty is high. Pretty, pretty is high. Oh, many, 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 pretty is high. Really, 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 really is high.
What's your first memory of having an interest in music? Maybe not necessarily playing. It could be one and the same moment. What's your earliest memory of saying, "Hey, I'm interested in this thing called music"?
Yeah, look, it kept coming back. My dad and the family sing along was certainly a part of our lives. I have an elder brother, Phil, who was a bass player, and he was 4 years older than me, so he was a bit more advanced with what he was listening to, and a sister who was 7 years older. And when they were teenagers, I was still pretty young, but I was influenced by the pop music of the day. We're talking 50s now and early 60s. And of course, when the Beatles hit, that was monumental for a generation, and the early Beatles music were great pop songs, but as they evolved, and it was only over a short period of time, I suppose, the Beatles evolved. Their music just went from, catchy pop songs to really intricate
Absolutely.
stuff,
Yeah.
orchestrated, George Martin's production and stuff. And I just got immersed myself in that. So when I started high school at 13, I just had to be a part of music. I used to sneak into the school hall at Balgowlah Boys High School in Sydney, and whenever at lunchtime, and jump on the piano and work out the chords to a Beatles song, or songs of the time. Loved it so much. And then my brother joined a band when I was about 16. He was about 20. He joined a band with Kerry Bedell in Sydney.
Wow.
Great jazz
Yeah.
singer, and
Yeah.
Jim Kelly, the guitar player.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Band called The Affair, Kerry Bedell and The Affair.
Mm.
And they were working around King's Cross at a club called the Whiskey A Go Go, and he used to sneak me in there when I was about 15 or 16,
Yeah.
and that introduced me to a whole new stuff. Kerry Bedell and what she was
Oh,
doing was so
absolutely.
amazing.
Yeah.
I got to about 17, and my brother Phil joined this Sydney band called Heart and Soul. And they were a band, they had some recording success, but they had a front line section, they had a French horn player, pretty weird, but they
Yeah.
did. And they had a saxophone player and a trumpet player. And they were doing sort of songs like MacArthur Park, like
Mm.
cutting edge,
Yeah.
quite, complicated Jimmy Webb music.
Mm.
And then I took another step there, and their keyboard player left. And I auditioned for them at 17 years old and got the gig. And I was still at school. And my dad had passed away
Yeah.
and I said to my mum, I'm sorry, but I'm leaving school. I'm going on the road with the band.
This is
And
what you want to do. Yeah.
yeah, and of course she sort of worried about me, not finishing high school. But
Mm.
she understood how much I loved it. My older brother was in the band, and off we went. And that's where we went to Brisbane. We did a tour up the New South Wales coast, ended up in Brisbane and then the Gold Coast.
The Ricky May moment. Yeah.
That connects the meeting to
But
Ricky.
so are you 100% self-taught, or were there piano lessons in the early
No,
days or
very,
not?
very few. I sort of did music at high school, but it was more classically based. But there was
Yep.
some writing and reading notation in that, learning a bit of basic, harmony
Mm.
and
Mm.
stuff, but not really. And it was all mostly ear. I mean, I had developed such a good ear by then, I was
Mm.
pretty confident. I mean, in Heart and Soul, they started, putting charts in front of me. So I had to sort of learn, to follow a chart, chord
Mm.
charts with a bit of notation, but enough to sort of get me going. And then when, meeting Ricky, a lot of that was ear playing with Ricky, but then after we finished in the beer garden in Surface, we came to Sydney and we did a stint at a big club called the Associated Motor Club in Sydney. And there was a good reading band in that. So I sort of had to up the ante.
Right.
And at every step, I don't know, I just took the next step,
Did you
If
get
I,
help with that, or largely that's just
well, I
on your
got a lot of
own?
support from these guys who are a bit older than me, and they always found musicians to be so supportive,
Yeah.
and guys that had helped me out with how you, because I started writing scratchy charts for Ricky, chord charts. They showed
Mm.
me how to lay out your charts better, and where to put your sign, where to put your coda, and so this all
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
basic stuff, but it developed. And then Ricky and I went overseas. We went to the UK in 1972,
Right.
and I moved to London and sort of started doing gigs over there with him around the place. I did come back to Australia for a short time, but then went back over,
Yeah.
and we were doing some decent gigs over in England. So it was just an evolving thing. I was just learning more and more how to arrange. I bought a book, Henry Mancini's Guide to Arranging. I
Right.
remember it
Yeah.
was one of my earliest
Yeah. Yeah.
reading, and it had
Yeah.
a set
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
tapes with it, and you'd listen to a section of you know
Yes.
Peter Gunn or something, and it'd explain how to voice
Getting the
horns,
idea.
and so I was working like that and teaching myself. So yeah, that all sort of rolled on, and then into the 80s when Ricky's career in Sydney really took off. He started doing some really good stuff, and he was nominated and awarded the Entertainer of the Year in about 1982, I think. And on the back of that floated a lot of TV work. Daryl
Oh,
Summits, we
yeah.
did Hey Hey It's Saturday
Yeah.
regularly.
Yeah. I
So,
think it's important for our international audience, and I suppose for anyone, I suppose, younger than 50 years in Australia who weren't around going to the clubs or in the 70s and 80s. But I think it's fair to say Ricky at the top of his game was sort of Australia's Frank Sinatra in a more poppy way. But
yeah,
he was the male jazz singer in the country for
yeah,
many years.
he absolutely was, and I think I said earlier, he goofed around a lot and had a lot of fun, crazy. We did cabaret or big concerts or all different types of venues,
Yes,
but he could just sing a ballad and nail it beautifully.
yes.
As a very classy,
Mm,
beautiful singer, great
mm.
tone, great pitch. Just natural.
I want to actually play a clip where you're backing another very famous person, and this time it's a 19-year-old Kylie Minogue. Now, you're on
Yes.
the Mike Walsh show, and Kylie looks like a very nervous little 19-year-old singer, probably singing one of her first times ever on national TV with an incredibly professional band. And I want to talk to you a little bit about this. Kylie, of course, went on, go for 10 years, and Kylie's the undisputed pop
Mm,
queen of the world. 80 million records sold, 2 Grammy Awards. Love her or hate her, she really did something amazing with the
of
talent.
course, of
But in
course.
this clip, the thing I want to really just talk to you about is, do you realize how important to her playing with a band as good as you guys would have been on that journey?
Well, Kylie's had just released Locomotion.
Right,
And you're exactly right. This was her first live television performance singing.
right.
She was invited on because Locomotion just came out and was starting to get a bit of traction. She said, "Oh, put her on this live Mike Walsh show to sing a song." This was recorded in front of a live audience, but it was pre-recorded. You're absolutely right. You can see the fear in her eyes
Yes.
there. And everybody starts somewhere. Look, the band was so lovely. The backing singers there, we've got Rick Price as one of the
Yes.
backing
I
singers.
recognise Rick.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Karen Minchell, I think, who was a fantastic session
Oh, they were
singer.
great singers. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
and
two
they were
girls.
so supportive of her too.
Kylie has just went on to rule the world in her niche.
Yep.
And I was thinking at the time, when you watch Kylie in her prime perform, all of that fear has gone out the door. It's get out
Oh,
of my
absolutely.
way.
Oh, yeah.
Get out of
Oh,
my
yeah.
way.
No.
I'm
Yeah.
here. Let's have a
Yeah.
look at Kylie on the Mike Walsh show with Jamie and the band. Blame It on the Boogie.
Baby's always dancing, wouldn't be a bad thing, but I don't get no loving, that's no lie. We spent the night at Frisco, at every kind of disco. Since that night I kissed my love goodbye. Don't blame it on sunshine, don't blame it on the moonlight, don't blame it on the good times, blame it on the boogie. You just got the sunshine, moonlight, good times, boogie. That nasty boogie bugged me, somehow it just drugged me, spellbound and gets me off my feet. I've changed my life completely, seen the light beneath me, baby just can't take his eyes off me. Don't blame it on sunshine, don't blame it on the moonlight, don't blame it on the good times, blame it on the boogie. You just got the sunshine, hey, moonlight, good times, boogie. I just can't control my feet. 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 Sunshine, moonlight, good time, boogie. Sunshine, moonlight, good time, boogie. Baby's always dancing, wouldn't be a good time. Boogie. Do 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 do. Sunshine, sunshine. Moonlight, moonlight. Good times, good times. Boogie. Sunshine, moonlight, yeah. Good times. Oh, boogie. You just got me sunshine, moonlight, good times. Yeah, boogie. Sunshine, yeah, moonlight, good times. Boogie. Sunshine, moonlight, good times. Play on the boogie.
Okay, Jamie, let's move forward a little bit. You were the musical director for many years on a fantastic national TV show headlined by two comedians that go under the name of Roy and HG. I'm a huge fan of these comedians. I think anyone who was around for the 2000 Olympics and saw how Roy and HG did the alternate commentary,
Yeah.
you could only be just blown away by their improvisational skills and their own sense of humour. But in Louise Anton's episode, I really wanted to play. There's a moment there where her and Danielle Gahar, the two beautiful ladies from the band, the vocalists, sang a Burt Bacharach song, Say a Little Prayer, live on TV, national TV, with you on acoustic piano, just the three of yous. Do you remember recording this with the girls?
Well, I didn't until I saw the clip, and then I remember that I used to do a few guest spots playing piano on that morning show. I think Ernie Sigley might have been involved, and I can't remember the circumstances, but yeah. So I when I saw that, I do remember we used to play that song quite a bit. So it wasn't as though it was the first time we'd done Say a Little Prayer. We were pretty rehearsed up and well versed in playing that song together.
And what I love about this is there's nowhere to hide. There's just
No.
you on piano.
Yeah.
So if the tennis balls get stuck on your
Yes.
palms, the whole
Yeah.
world's going to
Yeah,
hear
it falls over.
That's right. And there's so much I love about the feeling on this. You've got these two wonderful young ladies, equal to anyone I've ever heard from Australia, female
Yeah. Oh,
voices.
yeah, absolutely.
Unbelievable singers. But at the end of the clip, they make a very pronounced point of turning around to you and applauding, which is, I know, and when I said that to Louise, her comment was, of course, sure. Mate, I don't know about you. You've been a musician for a very long time. We're largely sometimes one step below the garbage collector as far as people recognising what we're doing. But there was a wonderful feeling of acknowledgement
Yeah.
to you there, you know.
Yeah. I think, look, what we had built up this camaraderie together, those two girls and myself.
Let's have a look at Say a Little Prayer. Danielle, Louise, and Jamie, just the three of yous. The
Yeah.
other thing I meant to say to you is you sort of broke every rule in the Australian Music Examinations classical piano book of actually enjoying yourself and tapping your foot, obviously. And the girls also, if you look at the clip, you are all just relaxed and digging it.
We all were able to establish a groove and a feel just with the three of us. And I
Here
think
it
that
is.
was pretty good.
Say a Little Prayer.
The moment I wake up, before I put on my makeup, I say a little prayer for you. At work I take time, and all through my coffee break time, I say a little prayer for you. Forever and ever, you stay in my heart, and I will love you forever and ever. We never will part. Oh, how I love you. Together, together is how it must be to live without you. Could only mean heartbreak for me. together, together is how it must be to live without you could only mean heartbreak for me.
Part of the Roy and HG show that was a little bit unique is that when they would have a special guest on, the band would not only often play an instrumental section for that guest to walk on, but the two girls would actually sing a little intro. How did that come about? Who was responsible for writing those cues to bring the guests on?
Okay, so the plan was, this was one of their, quirky things that Roy and HG wanted to do. We wanted to sing the guest on with their own little song that was just written for them, personalised. John Doyle would write the lyrics.
Okay.
So this is a show that's on live on Saturday night, live to air at 9:30 or whatever it was on ABC TV.
Yes.
We didn't really know who the guests were going to be until the producers would probably book them on a Tuesday or Wednesday of that week. John would write up a little bit of an intro. So the Jimmy Webb one, for example.
Yes.
There's a big story about Jimmy Webb, and I'll get to that in a minute.
Okay, yeah.
So John would write the lyrics and fax them to me. This is fax world.
Fax, yep.
I'd sit in the attic of my little house in Sydney, and on my keyboard, I'd put his words to melody. I'd think, how are we going to make that work? And in the case of the Jimmy Webb one, I went sort of great lengths. I tried to introduce a couple of motifs of his songs.
Yes.
I think when you hear that, there's a bit of MacArthur Park
absolutely
in there, and I think a bit of Wichita Lineman I managed to get in, and maybe a few others, to try and make it relevant to the guest. And so I would do that. Then I would put it into the girl's key. I'd sort of work it out, sing it to myself and go, And then this is all working with a microphone into a cassette.
Yes.
I would just put it into their key and sing in falsetto. So I'd sing like this, and I'd be playing.
You're doing a Michael Jackson moment. Yeah.
And I'd record the little play on.
Yeah.
The piano and my falsetto.
Yeah.
That goes into a courier over to the girls. They get it maybe Thursday or Friday. They'd get together.
Yep.
Just for an hour or two before the show.
Yep.
And there was always usually two guests on the show that had intros. So there was two of these every week we'd have to do. And then we'd go into the studio on Saturday afternoon. Rehearsals would start maybe at 4:00. I by now had, scored the little play-ons out for the whole band, and we'd play through them. And the girls would sing them, and we'd sort of work out, and they'd worked out their harmonies. And John Doyle would walk into the studio to start sort of dress rehearsals. And that was the first time he heard his lyrics put to music. Oh. I never ran it by him ever.
No.
We had this incredible rapport, John and I, that we did this hundreds of times. We did 140 episodes of this show.
Yeah, he trusted you.
And he would walk in while we were doing playing through the sound check of the play on, and he'd just look up at me and smile, and I'd smile at him. And it was like, what a magical moment that was,
Jamie, let's have a listen, and we'll talk a bit about Jimmy Webb, but let's have a listen to what you came up with in your little attic, singing in falsetto voice, to bring on one of the world's greatest ever songwriters, Jimmy Webb.
There's a melody that had its birth in Jimmy Webb. Songs tell of places and chordal locations remembered in tone. guitar linesman is still on the line. Jimmy Webster, you're still here for a short time.
I had idolised Jimmy Webb from pre-Ricky May days. I think I threw up MacArthur Park before as one of the great pieces of music of my, inspiration in my life. I mean, when I first heard Richard Harris singing that song and that orchestration, there's a song that was all over the place. It was like a mini, concerto. It was in 3 parts, and what a piece of music it was. It ran for 5 minutes or something. So I just idolised Jimmy Webb. But then there was all the other Jimmy Webb music too, the band, The Fifth Dimension and stuff. So turns out Jimmy Webb's coming to Australia, and we would have a production meeting on Tuesday to talk about who the guests would be for the following Saturday.
Yep.
So we're sitting around there, and one of the producers said, "Oh, we've been offered Jimmy Webb for the show on Saturday night." Yeah. Well, I sort of threw my hands up in the air in a bit of a terrified way. I went, "Oh my God,
Your hero.
This is my
Yeah.
Jimmy Webb." He said, "Yeah, he wants to come on and he wants to do a song with the band." And honestly, it was the most incredible moment in my career, and I'll never forget it. And I said, "Oh, that's amazing." And Jimmy had just released an album called 10 Easy Pieces of him at the piano singing his own songs. Because most of the time, other people had recorded Jimmy's songs, famous Glenn Campbell. So many people had done his songs. But I particularly love that album, and I'd heard it. And he's not the greatest singer, but I love, it's like Burt Bacharach. I love hearing Burt Bacharach sing his own songs.
Exactly.
Something about the way a songwriter interprets their own
I agree.
things. And so I'd heard Jimmy's version of Wichita Lineman. Oh, no, sorry, of Galveston, the song was, of Galveston. And they said, Jimmy wants to do his arrangement of Galveston that he does on this album, but he wants you to score it out for the band. And I was, God, this is just incredible. I don't know what to think about all this. So anyway, sure, just got to plow on. This has got to be done. There's a show to be done. And and they said, "You're not going to meet Jimmy or see him until Saturday afternoon in the studio for the rehearsal." So I put the arrangement of Galveston together, go into the studio with the band at about 2:00 on the Saturday. We played through it a few times. It's all playing itself nicely. It sounds cool. I'm happy with it. I'm waiting now for Jimmy to arrive. So we're all on the stage in the Studio 22 at the ABC at Gore Hill in Sydney. And then through the studio door, the floor manager comes in with Jimmy Webb. And I get up from my keyboard, as I always would, and walk across and welcome the guest and say, "Great to have you. I'm Jamie Rigg. I'm the musical director for the show. Real great, to have you." Oh, this was a special one for me. So I walk over to Jimmy. Jimmy, I said, "I can't tell you what incredible moment this is for me. I've loved your music from when I was a young kid, and and it's such a special thing, not only to meet you, but be able to perform with you today." And I just said, "It's just so fabulous." And he quietly said to me, put his arm around me, he said, "That's very kind of you." He said, "I'm going to need your help to get through this." He said, "I don't do too much live TV. I'm going to need your..." So immediately he throws it back.
Well, that would have put you a bit at ease. So
he said, "I'm going to need your help to get through this." And I went, and all of a sudden I go, "Don't worry, Jimmy. You'll be right, mate." So all of a sudden I'm supporting him. It was just the most incredible moment. We have the rehearsal, and I was actually a duet because an Australian singer called Dave Graney did it as well. He'd just been sort of crowned king of pop in the whatever year that was, 1996 or something. And they did it as a duet, the song Galveston. But before the show, I went into Jimmy's dressing room. He invited me in, and I went in and said, "Good luck tonight." fabulous. Such a pleasure to work with you. And he said, yes, so much. Thank you so much for what you've done for me. And,
Yeah.
music's an incredible leveler, I mean, everybody has their strengths and weaknesses,
They do. And I mean, in your life, and I know you've had so many moments of this, but spending close to 20 years as Ricky May's right-hand man, being there at that very first moment when Kylie Minogue stepped onto a major television stage and being in a position to help her, running into your hero, one of
Mm,
the all-time great songwriters, and
yeah,
being asked, mate, would you mind helping me through this? I love
yeah,
that.
I
I
know.
think I think that's what life's all about,
It
you
is
know.
beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah,
We're all human. We all
yeah.
have our fears and weaknesses, and that. So another great moment in my career that
Oh,
was. I'll never forget that one. Of course, in 4 years of that show,
oh,
we worked with pretty well everybody in
yeah.
the industry live on
Yeah.
national TV, and what a band! I mean,
What a band. I'm going to put up a photo. You sent for a photo of you with that
yeah,
band,
yeah,
and I'll just let the audience see that band. But
yeah,
here's another great thing I love about this podcast. I did a podcast with Peter Northcote, which is where I heard about Louise Anton. Never heard of her in my life before.
yeah, yeah,
Having been a huge Roy and HG fan and watched every one of those shows, I reckon I saw all of the Club B shows.
yeah.
I then did a Rex Go one and featured Rex back and John Farnham. What I didn't realise at the time is all of this, I'm hearing you. I'm
Yep, yep.
I only find out again after talking to these great guys that there's this guy called Jamie Rigg. He's the bloke that backed the two girls playing Say a Little Prayer.
Mm,
You've been in my ears and
mm,
on screen all my life, but through the podcast, I love that I can introduce you because if I didn't know who you were, there will be a lot of people who watch this and think, damn it, I've heard Jamie too. That's the guy that did all that
yeah.
work.
I think that's the thing of being a musical director. A lot of the time, you're a behind the scenes guy, really. You're nuts and bolts putting stuff together.
And
Um,
does that suit your personality? Do you like being the
I,
behind the scenes
yeah,
guy?
I think it did. I was never your flamboyant out the front musical director type.
Mm.
You know, the guitar players get all the glory. Let's face it, Brian. Peter,
That's that's
Peter
right.
and Rex.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
up
that's
there,
right.
and in a television environment,
Well, they can move around,
TV directors love guitar players and they love horn players. They
That's
love
right.
getting up close to them, and
Yeah.
me sitting back there on my keyboard. I mean, there's a few shots of me always hands on the keyboard and stuff,
Yes.
but
Yeah, the drummer gets the go. But it's a
yeah,
good segue into a good horn player. Now, I actually was just surfing the web and I found a clip of Late Night Australia, which was another band that you were the musical director of. Just a little quartet. What a band. And you
mm,
happen to do a feature with, look, I think one of the world's greatest ever jazz trumpet
mhm.
players, James Morrison. Now, in this clip, James has a very different hairdo than he does today and
He
wears a
has he has hair, in fact, Brian.
and he wears a very different shirt size than he currently does. And it's a clip called Freshwater Girls where another Australian artist, this time a painter who I've always been a fan of, the great Ken Doan. James put out an album called Postcards from Down Under, I think, and it was
Mm,
setting music to Ken Doan's paintings. And Ken, to me, always paints with some sort of childish abandon. And if I think about it, James Morrison, despite the brilliant harmonic, to me, well, I don't know, do you? I still think he plays with that childlike
yeah.
wonderment, like what's going to happen now? Here we
No,
go.
no boundaries, really, is
No
it?
boundaries. What's your
Yeah.
memory of, did you realise at that time where James would take his career? Because he certainly, like Tommy Emmanuel, he's one of the few in Australia that really has taken an instrumental career very high.
Yeah. Well, I think even at that age, he was a prodigy. Everyone knew. Probably James was, late 20s in that clip. Um, and, that show was another great musical moment. That was 1988. And that was Don Lane's Tonight Show. I think we touched on that before. And we worked, that was live to air. This was live to air 4 nights a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Oh.
For best part of a year, we did that show at Channel 10. Don Lane wanted to sort of become a bit cooler. You know, he'd done his Tonight
Yes.
Show with
Yeah.
Bert Newton prior to that.
That's right. Yeah.
And then I think Larry King Live came out in America, and Don wanted to sort of say, oh, let's do a sort of Larry King Live sort of Tonight Show, a bit more cool. Need a sort of cool late night band.
And what a cool band. You've got Doug Gallagher, your friend Doug on
Yeah.
drums. The guy,
Yeah.
the boy from Dubbo. Can you believe it? Like, what an
Dubbo,
amazing
Doug.
drummer. The
Yeah.
boy from Dubbo, which for our international audience, if you wanted to find a place as far away from jazz in the world as you could, go to Dubbo. You know.
Yeah.
But and you had Victor Rounds on bass.
Victor
and
was on bass, Clive Lendich on
That's
guitar. I mean, we did it 4 nights a week, and the band, a lot of these times I did sub in other guys, a few other guys did it as well.
Yes.
But that was the core of it. During the time of that show, we worked with some big names. Played Brian Ferry live, came on that show, and we did Brian live with, you know, a great band. I augmented the band with some great backing singers. I think Wendy Matthews might have been a backing singer at the time, because she was a great session singer in Sydney around that time. So that was a live show 4 nights a week. But when you alerted me to that clip of James, I'd forgotten about that one. I did know James quite well, because he used to come and play with Ricky quite a bit, get up and blow jams with Ricky.
Yes. Including
went
on
over-
Hey It's Saturday, I think, a couple of times.
Yeah, lots.
Yeah,
And Ricky and he,
Yeah.
you know, out of the same ilk, that same sort of genius ilk of doing crazy stuff.
Well, I
together.
think you should be very proud. We're going to play this clip now. You play beautiful modern contemporary keyboards, electronic keyboards on this track, not the acoustic piano. Yeah.
Well, this was the 80s, the age of the classic Yamaha DX7.
Well, it sounds...
Which, that keyboard owned the 80s.
It
was
did.
the sound of so much of the 80s. I had a Hammond organ on that show, but this particular thing, I remember I used the DX7, which was
just
a beautiful imitation Rhodes sound, which was fabulous.
And there's a moment in this clip where James lets fly, as he always does, just with beautiful free improvisation, and he does it as good as anyone in the world. And it must have been wonderful for you to be there in that moment thinking, hello, you know, as I said, like this guy's went on to people like Wynton Marsalis says, wow, James Morrison can play, you know, like as if like, thank you very much. Let's have a listen. Freshwater Girls, Jamie on keyboards with the band, and the great James Morrison on flugelhorn. one of the things that I love about your career, like a lot of people, I was a huge fan of Graham Lyle in the early days in Melbourne at Channel 9 when he was MD on the golden years, I guess, of the big band era with Don Lane. But Graham eventually moved out of that work and went to Perth and took on a
He did.
whole new role of music education. Now, how did you get into, I guess, formally get into a music education role?
Yeah, totally left field. So what had happened, during 2000s, around 2006, 2007, I have a very dear friend who's a fantastic saxophone reed man and arranger called Julian Goff. Now, I don't know if you know of Julian's work. He had been in Monica and the Moochers
Oh, yes.
a long time and done a lot of arranging. And I was using Julian to do arrangements for various things. During that period around 2006, I got the job doing carols in the Domain in Sydney, which was the Christmas carols.
Yep.
Big job conducting the Sydney Youth Orchestra and choir, and I had to get arrangers in to do, write up a whole lot of Christmas stuff. And Julian did some stuff. Julian had just started a job working at the Australian Institute of Music, which was in Surrey Hills in Sydney. And it turns out that the head of the contemporary music department just resigned. This was at sort of the beginning of 2007. And somebody said to me, why don't you apply for the job? You'd be really great, all your knowledge and experience, passing this on to young students in, wanting to come into the music, have a career in music.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I have no experience in education. It's not my world. And, even though I'd had a lot of experience, but I don't know, somebody coerced me into going have an interview, and I went and met with the guy who was running the institute at the time, and we had a good chat. And I sort of straight up to him and said, look, I've got no experience in teaching or anything. And he said, yeah, but we like your fact that you've got this background, you've got a lot of experience that would be invaluable to young students. Why don't you give it a shot? So I sort of said yes. And then all through my life, Brian, I've said yeah. I've never said no to big things that have come along.
Good
the
idea.
Big moments. I've said yes and then freaked out and worked out how to do it later. It's sort of like,
I think it's the way to go.
The most ideal way to prepare yourself for something. Just say, do you want to do this? Do you want to do carols in the Domain and conduct an orchestra in front of 100,000 people? Okay, I'll do it. And I did it for 3 years,
Yeah.
And so this is what happened in education. I said, oh, okay, I did it. And for the first 6 months, I didn't know what the hell was going on. I remember they gave me these 2 huge books of all the 2 degrees that they were offering, a diploma of music, a bachelor of music. There was a master's. And look, take these away and read through them and learn them. This is the course we're teaching, That's how I sort of was looking at all this educational jargon going, what the hell is that? Anyway, I did that for nearly 10 years.
Wow.
I left 2 months shy of 10 years in that job as head of contemporary music. I went on to be the associate dean of the school because under, whether it was I can take some credit for it. The school did really well over this period of time. We started to get a lot of intake. We changed the structure of it. We became mainstream. We had a lot of contemporaries. I brought a lot of teachers into that school who were guys that I'd worked with, industry guys. I brought industry who had all this industry experience, and it worked, from a marketing perspective. The school really went gangbusters, and we had a lot of students signing up to be taught by these great
real players and people who've done it. Did you ever get through that curriculum, or did you end up teaching your own way?
Yes, I did. I did sort of have to work pretty hard, but I ended up knowing it pretty well. And I became part of the academic board, and I've still got a connection with education, because when I did leave there in 2017, the guy who had been the dean of the school went to another school, and I wanted a bit of a fresh challenge, so I went there.
Okay.
That's called the Academy of Music and Performing Arts
Right.
in Sydney, and I still have an association there. I've been teaching there part time. When COVID came along, it upended music education. Of course, we all
Yeah.
had to go online. But since after COVID, I've been teaching part time
Good.
and still playing, still doing a little bit of gigging here and there,
Yeah.
and
From what I can see,
enjoying
you're enjoying it, mate. Yeah.
yeah, well, it's taken on a different perspective now. I'm doing it because I love to do it,
Yeah. One final question on that music education, and it's something I talked a lot, just about all my guests. Do you sort of take the view that, like, if you're going to study to be a dentist or an accountant or a doctor or a lawyer, whatever, the piece of paper that you end up with really is your ticket to a job. If you come out with a medical degree and you're prepared to live 100 kilometres west of any capital city, the job is just there. The house, the car, and the good money is waiting for you. When you come out of a music college, I don't care what it is, and you've got your bit of paper, I sort of think it's a lonely job saying, look, Wynton Marsalis is walking along, he's looking for a bass player, and you're showing them the bit
I've
of
got
paper.
a Bachelor of Music,
Like, but the benefit from what I get talking to the guests is really it's who you meet in that course more than a qualifier. Is that what you'd say?
Absolutely. And we made that a big part of education, and the networking component. We force students to network while they're at the college. You have to go get some guys together and take them out of their comfort zone. We introduce them to music that they didn't particularly. You have to learn to play a bossa nova. You have to learn swing feels. You have to learn to play funk music, because if you want to be an employable musician when you leave here, you get, the more things you can do, different styles that you can play, the more employable you're going to be. And that was a philosophy that I instilled in that place early on.
And you're a good example when we heard all those wonderful TV bands, and I imagine you had, I suppose that's a question, did you have a fair degree of say in who you got in that band, or was that made?
Oh, yeah. Oh, all the time.
All the time.
Whenever I was employed to do a TV, musical director job,
you had the say.
You choose your players. Oh, no one ever said you have to use X, Y, Z.
No.
And
what was and this will be great for the audience to hear, because we've just talked about all of that thing, the education versus being able to do it. Did you have a little checklist in your mind? I'm looking for a good tenor sax player, or did you have a little preset? Well, geez, Errol Buttle's good. Is Errol available? I'll get Errol.
Yeah.
Did you have a list in your mind, or what was your process?
Look, I crossed paths with so many wonderful players, and you get to know which guys. Even though the players are great, you might look. We haven't talked about it, but I did a tour in 2002 called Long Way to the Top.
Yes.
Which was a rock tour.
Yeah.
This was an amazing tour that Michael Chugg and Billy Thorpe had put together.
We'll actually look at a clip from this, because I think this is, well, let's talk about that now.
Yeah, well, we're talking here, my dear friend Brian Cadd, who I'm still a very, very close friend with, was on that tour with Glenn Shorrock.
Everyone was on it.
They were Ross Wilson, they went right back to Cole Joy, Little Paddy, the early days of Australian popular music.
Yeah.
Right through to, Billy, all different, Billy's bands from the Aztecs, his early days. Yep. Huge lineup. I think it was 40 artists on that show.
You could barely fit them on the stage.
So it sort of required a different sort of band for that than a lot of the guys I'd worked with. The drummer ended up doing it was Mark Kennedy. And Mark Kennedy had worked with Renee Gayer and lots of those sort of rocky soul rock people. So that's an example of how I did sort of, select a different band. Harry Bruce was the bass player on that tour. Okay. Now, Harry had also worked with Renee a lot, and he was more out of a pop rock sort of background.
Yeah. I got to see Billy Thorpe play once live at the Gold Coast. There was an old place called the Playroom. I don't know whether you remember it.
I worked there.
Well, you would. And my memory of Billy is when you see Billy, and you see him in this clip, when Billy's standing there with a Gibson Les Paul, there's two things I remember. It's going to be loud, and it's going to be good. That's fantastic, Jamie. A very different band and a very different gig there to your little quartet on a late night TV band, but fantastic. The energy's just through the roof. I do want to take you back, though, to your little quartet band in late night Australia, the Don Lane show, because we've talked about you playing with some of your heroes and great songwriters. There's not too many better songwriters than Glenn Fry. And his career, I read where when Glenn passed away, sadly a little while ago, he left an estate in excess of 120 million US dollars from his music career, from his songwriting and performing career, not from buying and selling real estate.
Yeah.
And I suppose this is something I want to talk to you too, because you and your colleagues, and I love putting some spotlight on you in this podcast. You play every bit as good as these guys. You really do. You're a wonderful musician, and your colleagues, the band. And when we're going to see Glenn Fry here sing one of his most famous songs, he co-wrote Desperado, and that is, we were joking off air before that, you know, if you're in the 80s and you're in a band, you had to play Desperado. You couldn't get a gig at the RSL club if you didn't know how to play Desperado. But what you touched on it before, what a unique thing to hear a songwriter sing their song. What do you remember about what I believe was a bit of an impromptu moment with Glenn Fry and Desperado?
Yeah, well, look, you've jolted my memory about that, and Doug probably has a better recollection than me. But so I think, what happened was Glenn wasn't scheduled to perform on the show that night, not musically, and he was there for an interview. And then somehow circumstances changed, and Glenn said, "Oh, I'd like to maybe just do a song with the guys." I think he probably heard us rehearsing for somebody else when he came into the studio and thought, okay, these guys seem to know this stuff.
Yeah.
I can do a song. We probably had a chat, and he said, look, I'll play piano, do Desperado. You know Desperado? Sure, we know Desperado. What key do you want to do it in? That's usually how it rolls, you know?
Yeah, that's
just
right.
like someone jumping up at the local
club
on a Saturday night.
Yeah.
Do you guys know Desperado? Just happens to be Glenn Fry, you know?
Yeah.
So we rehearsed it. And there's one vocal line that he said, so you guys are going to have to sing this line, and you got to answer me when I sing, you got to let somebody love you. And you guys sing, let somebody love you. So there's Victor and I looking at each other.
Pretty exposed in the vocal role.
God, and we're trying to emulate the Eagles, one of the greatest vocal groups in the world. And we did. I said to Victor, I think I'll take that part, you take that part, and when Glenn sings that, we'll just answer him, let somebody. And we did. And there it is on the recording. And after the show, Glenn came over and said, well done, guys, you did a great job. And Victor, I said, sorry about the vocal backing wasn't quite. He said, nah, that's fine. He said, the Eagles never got that part right either,
wow.
In a fun sort of way, and it's another moment of musos. We just all connect, together.
You should
on all levels just connect, aren't they, and have fun,
You should be so proud when you sit back and watch some of these clips. And I'm so happy to be able to tell a little bit of your story, because not too many people in their career get to sing a famous singer's most famous song with him and back him. And when you watch this clip, and there's a beautiful moment at the end of this, the same as there was with the girls when you played that Burt Bacharach song, at the very end, live on TV, you hear Glenn Fry say, thank you, as he looked at you and the band.
Yeah.
Nice job, fellas.
Yeah, okay.
He made a point of saying that, and I've included that in this clip. Let's have a listen to Jamie in one of his vocal moments as well. And again, you're on the and you're on the electronic keyboards here because Glenn's on the grand piano. And this is where you've had You can't go and sit and play
Yep.
with him on the piano.
Yeah,
You had to
yeah,
do
yeah.
what you got to do. Desperado, the great Glenn Fry, and Jamie and the boys in the band.
Desperado, why don't you come to your senses? You've been out riding fences for so long now. Oh, you're a hard one, but I know you got your reasons. These things that are pleasing you can hurt you somehow. Don't you draw the queen of diamonds, boy. She'll beat you if she's able. You know the queen of hearts is always your best bet. Now it seems to me some fine things have been laid upon your table, but you only want the ones that you can't get. Desperado, oh, you ain't getting no younger. Your pain and your hunger, they're driving you home. And freedom, oh, freedom, well, that's just some people talking. Your prison is walking through this world all alone. Don't your feet get cold in the wintertime? The sky don't snow and the sun won't shine. It's hard to tell the nighttime from the day. You're losing all your highs and lows. Ain't it funny how the feeling goes away? Desperado, why don't you come to your senses? Come down from your fences. Open the gate. It may be raining, but there's a rainbow above you. You better let somebody love you. Oh, you better let somebody love you before it's too late. Thank you. Nice job, fellas.
Okay, Jamie, coming down the home straight, you've led such a busy life as a musician in so many different fields and at the top of the tree, working with the best of the best. If you could go back in time and time travel to that young little Jamie, when you're at home listening to your dad playing the piano and first starting to muck around with your brother and what have you in different bands, if you could time travel back and give that young Jamie your best piece of advice of making a success of a career in music, what do you think you'd say to yourself, to that young little Jamie?
Yeah, well, it's a big question because, I use the word lucky and fortunate so many times looking back on my career, and that's so true. I mean, things just fell into place for me, and I was almost embarrassed by how things came along for me because, as I touched on before, I didn't have a formal music education, but things rolled out for me. But probably, there's a lot more I could have done. I probably wished I could have, written and orchestrated music on a bigger level. I did get to do some of that work later on, but I didn't have a formal education in it, and it probably would be going back to that. I mean, back in my early days with Ricky, he he wanted me to go to the con in Sydney to study at the con after we started playing. He said, ever thought about going to the con and getting a proper education and stuff? And I was having too much fun. Basically, it was already
Yeah,
at the point where I was out doing gigs with him, and I thought, well, what do I want to stop everything now for and go and study for 2 or 3 years or four
fair enough.
years? And but I had the lucky breaks. I was very fortunate. Things rolled out for me, as I said, and without that, it could have been quite a different story without so many things sort of snowballing, one thing going into another. And I have touched on this before, and I've said to you, Brian, that I sort of said yes to everything and then worked out later how to do it,
I
And
think,
most of the time that worked out, but it could have been disastrous too.
I think that is, I know it could have been, but I think there is a lot of merit in taking opportunities. But I think the other thing, in fairness to you, it's one thing to accept an opportunity, but it's the other thing to have put in the time. And even though you might not give yourself the credit you should, when someone's offered you a job, be it Ricky May, they have seen and heard something in you
Yeah.
that caught their attention, which means you had already put in a lot more work than maybe you think you did to get to
Yeah.
that point.
Oh yeah, look, I agree. All these things that rolled out for me. I mean, if I'd stuffed up, when I first got offered a TV job, if it had been a train wreck, then I wouldn't have got offered another one.
That would have been
I
the end.
found a way of getting through. I probably improvised a lot, not in my playing so much, but in the way I was doing things. But look, I garnered I had the trust of good musicians. They, and without that, I mean, without all the guys that came and did gigs for me and with me, I wouldn't have had anywhere near this career. I was able to ring up the Rex Goes and the Peter Northcotts and the Victor Rounds, the Doug Gallagher's, saying, mate, I've got a thing coming up. Do you want to do it? And they all said yes, because
Well,
they
there's
knew,
your answer. That's your
yeah,
answer, mate.
that, they trusted that, I was, it was going to be good, and I was going to put the best possible band together, and we were going to have a good time, and the music was going to be solid, and I think that was the key to my success rolling on.
Okay. What's the best way for people if they want to reach out and connect with you? What's your preferred way for someone to get in touch with
Well,
you?
look, I'd love to hear from them on, obviously when your wonderful work comes out in a podcast, I'll be putting that up on my Facebook page. I'm not a big social media user, but I'll put that up, and love to hear from anybody who's got, memories going back through. I've posted things from time to time of clips with Ricky May and stuff, and get a lot of people saying, oh, I loved Ricky, and what a wonderful time it was when he was in his heyday, and etc. Love to hear from people, and I'll try and get back to them and answer some of their questions if they've got stuff they want to know.
I'm sure there will be so many people who will enjoy this brief look at your wonderful career and life, and they will reach out. We're going to finish with two things. I want to play one more clip from the Roy and HG show, this with Grammy winner Thelma Houston. Now, I always thought Thelma Houston was a relation to Whitney Houston, but I find out she isn't. She has the same last name, but she is no relation to Whitney, even though she has a voice that reminds you of the late Whitney Houston. At the time when Thelma appeared on this show, she was top of the pops, Grammy Awards. And it's another example where that band, the Roy and HG band, always rose to the occasion. So we're going to have a listen to that final clip of Don't Leave Me This Way. But importantly, after that, and this is something that I absolutely love doing in every episode, I reach out to all my guests and say, would you like to be involved in a collaboration? Everyone says absolutely. I ask them, pick a song. And you picked a beautiful song by Fats Waller, but there's a little bit of background history to this. Tell me about why you chose this song and did it this way.
Yeah, well, I think goes back to the early part of our conversation today was that listening, my dad playing the piano and the family sing-alongs. This is one of the earliest songs that I can remember him playing from a very young age. So this song sticks out for me. The family sing-alongs were a regular occurrence just around the piano, and he would play this stride style piano in that Fats Waller style.
Yes.
And they'd all sing classic Ain't Misbehavin'. And I've known this song and been able to sort of sing and play it probably since I was 8, 9, 10 years old,
Wow.
Wow. And it's I've played at lots in gigs, I suppose. I've done all sorts of weird gigs when I was just playing in piano bars in my early days, with just trying to survive and doing anything, and out there playing solo piano in a pub. I've done that a few times. Did it in the UK. I actually lived in London in the 70s and got a gig playing in the East End of London where my dad was born.
Yeah.
And I got to play Ain't Misbehavin' on an old piano in the corner of a pub called the Londoner in the East End of London.
Wow.
And that was a pretty strong connection for me to take me back to where my dad was born in West Ham in London.
I really enjoyed playing. I play a bit of bass clarinet. You're playing and singing the piano.
Too. That is great.
And mate, it's just been so much fun. It's been an honour to spend some time with you, all of the people you've played with, and to hear that nowadays there's this feeling that you've got to go and study music and, get a 48 degrees if to get anywhere in life. You're a really good example, as are many of the people you played with, that you're the real deal. You've just went out there, had a go, gave it your best, and moved on day after day. It's been an honour to spend some time and to play with you. Thanks so much for being part of the series.
Oh, my absolute pleasure, and great to play with you remotely. And I don't think I've ever done a gig with a bass clarinetist before.
Pushing the boundaries.
The firsts keep coming, don't they? That's the wonderful thing about the industry.
Yeah.
Jamming with the bass clarinet. So
thanks, Jamie.
Look, hope to catch up soon, Brian. All the best, mate. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Bye for now.
Cheers, mate. Bye.
What an amazing story Jamie has to tell. It was such a thrill to spend some time hearing the inside stories from someone who has worked at the highest level in the Australian television industry and in so many different roles across the entertainment industry. Please enjoy our version of the Fats Waller standard, Ain't Misbehavin'.
I don't go out late, nowhere to go. I'm home about 8, just me and my radio. Ain't misbehaving, saving all my love for you. I know for certain the one I love. I'm through with flirting, it's you that I'm thinking of. Ain't misbehaving, I'm saving all my love for you. Like Jack Horner, who's in the corner, I don't go nowhere, what do I care? Your kiss is worth waiting for. Believe me, baby, now, no one to talk with, I'm all by myself. No one to walk with, I'm happy on the shelf. Ain't misbehaving, I'm saving all my love for you. Take it away, Brian. Like Jack Horner, I'm in the corner, I don't go nowhere, what do I care? Your kiss is worth waiting for. Believe me, baby, now, no one to talk with, I'm all by myself. No one to walk with, I'm happy on the shelf. Ain't misbehaving, I'm saving all my love for you. I ain't misbehaving, I'm saving all my love for you. Oh yeah.